That's good.
Okay. Great. There's nothing else I have to do. That looks okay on your end.
It looks fine.
Okay,
Floor
great.
is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for everybody's patience. I appreciate it. I'm Julie Reynolds. I work for Barrie Police, of course, and I am here to talk to you about keeping safe and frauds and scams that are ongoing problems. Roger and I were speaking earlier, and he remembered me from the presentation I did for C.A.R.P a few years ago. So bear with me. If a few of you have seen this, there are a few new slides, a few twists and turns that'll be interesting and helpful. One of the reasons that these presentations are so important is that prevention is our best way to deal with fraud. Once the money is gone, it can be extremely difficult to recover it, to catch the person that the perpetrator, and to hold them accountable and get that money back for whoever loses the money. So it's so important that we prevent it from happening in the first place. Oftentimes these scams and frauds are international offenses, crossing borders, covering a lot of space, involving different agencies, and it would just be too time consuming and expensive to go after the perpetrators. So that's why it's so important that we do these talks and we talk about it, and other people who attend the talks can go out and share the information with their friends, their family too, to help protect them. So don't be afraid to interrupt. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to interject. I can't see everyone. I've only got Gwen, Roger, and Kathy on my screen. So if you put your hand up or wave, I won't see it. You'll just have to interject. As I was telling Gwen, this is the first time I've done a virtual presentation. So Gwen, I'm not sure about the rules. I don't know if you lay out rules to the participants or how that usually goes, but is it okay for people to turn on their mic if they want to interject and ask questions?
Absolutely.
That's all right with you? Okay, great. So we're gonna start with an introduction about why scams are so rampant, specifically in Canada, why we tend to be targeted. I'll give you some safety tips on how to protect yourself on the computer and on technology. We'll talk about some of the different scams and crimes against seniors that we see. And it is geared towards seniors, but this type of crime affects everyone. It's not just seniors that get targeted. We see it all the time that people of all ages get targeted. But unfortunately, some seniors are particularly vulnerable, whether they're not familiar with technology or as familiar with technology as younger people. Maybe that's why they get wrapped up in it or might fall for it. So there are a lot of different different crimes that occur, and again, it affects people of all ages, but for some unfortunate reason, seniors are often targeted. So how connected are you? I want everyone to think about this. What kind of social media you're going on a regular basis? Do you text people, text messages? Do you download apps on your phone, on your devices, and play online games? Do you do online banking or shop, take photos and share photos online, enter contests online, and do you use the internet for research? These are the main uses for technology where we see people are getting targeted, and people are reaching out to them and taking advantage. So you have to be very conscious of all the different ways you're using technology and be aware that some of them aren't 100% safe. So some of the safety tips, some of the ways you can protect yourself, general safety tips: set strong passwords. Most of us don't do this. I can't remember 100 passwords. I'm not exaggerating. I think I have about 100, and I have them on my phone in a locked note, so that it has to see my face. My phone has to use facial recognition to get into that note with all my passwords. Some people are setting up a note and
On a Zoom call right now.
not locking it. But be aware that you can do that. You can lock it with a password code or with your facial recognition, depending on the technology that you're using, so that people can't access that, because it's not always going to be possible for everybody to remember all their different passwords. And safest thing is not to write them down. And a word of caution: if you are writing down your PIN number for your bank account and keeping it in your wallet, I have seen instances where the bank refuses to entertain that it's not your fault when there's a loss. It is in your contract when you set up your account that you will not write down the password. So that can be very problematic if your card gets stolen and your password is with it, or your phone is with it and your passwords are unlocked and they're able to gain access to your accounts. The bank is not going to treat that as a fraud where you had no involvement or couldn't have done anything to protect yourself. So be very careful with that.
I have a question about passwords.
Yes.
I'm always being asked when I do things, shall they save my password? Now I say no, but sometimes it's ended up saved anyways. The other option is, do you want to go to Google, whatever it is, cloud or something, to choose one of your passwords there? If these passwords are being saved in cyberspace, is that not dangerous?
Yeah, I would suggest that you do not save them. It is dangerous. Any information that you're allowing someone else to have and take care of, there is a chance that it could be compromised. So we all hear about those data leaks, that kind of thing. I would be very cautious about saving them, for sure. Now, that being said, you can only do so much. So like I said, I have my password saved on my phone. That's not 100% safe either, because phones can be hacked. A lot of different areas in technology can be hacked. So be very cautious about saving them. Now, about the passwords, setting strong passwords, I really like the idea that is suggested here to use an acronym, because that will be hard for someone to figure out. If you use your nickname and some common numbers like 666 or 123, repeating numbers in sequence, very poor security. So as you can see on the screen, they suggest something like the acronym here, because people are not going to be able to guess C.A.R.P, but you have that acronym to remind you of what the password is. Do not use the same password for all your accounts, of course. Make sure that you upgrade your software. That's very important. So recently my dad was getting the update your software, and he didn't, to upgrade his protections, and he didn't, and he did end up getting a virus, a Trojan horse virus. So it's so important, and most people are nervous about hitting that OK. When they get a pop-up, they're nervous about hitting OK. But if it is the software that you have to protect your computer, make sure that you are hitting OK on that one. Otherwise, the updates are actually closing loopholes where viruses are getting in. So it's so important to update them as soon as possible. You can create a Google alert for your name by going to google.com alerts. That's something that most of us probably won't do. But in case you're worried about someone putting your name on photos or somewhere on Google, you can do that. Keep your browser in check. Be careful when you're sharing personal information online. Best actually not to share personal information online, to do it over the phone or in person with people you know, but not to do it online, because again, online it can be hacked. Always think before you click, think before you send photographs. You can't get things back. Once they're gone, you lose control over where they're going, especially photographs. We see that a lot. Shopping online, you have to be very cautious. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll get into that in depth later. And taking and sharing photos, be very cautious about that. Make sure that your security settings are set so that, say if you're on Facebook, only friends can see your photos, your information, very important. Turn off geocoding if you want to enhance your privacy. There's always remote locate, lock, and wipe software for smartphones. And one of the places that you can get help with that is in pre-COVID times. There's the mall, there's the jump store. They have technicians in the back that will help you with things like that. Recently, when I wanted to pass on a phone to someone else, I went in there, and for $10 or $15, I can't remember how much exactly, but it was 10 or 15, and they were willing to wipe it for me. They do all that for me, which is great because I'm not very good at that kind of thing. Back up your data on a regular basis. Be very cautious when you're using free Wi-Fi in a public place. Hackers can get in to your computer much easier when you're using Wi-Fi in a public place than on your own Wi-Fi. Make sure you wipe your phone before you recycle it. And GPS, just realize that Facebook and Twitter and other apps are tracking where you are. And if you don't want that, if you're afraid that they'll have information you don't want them to have, then make sure you disable your GPS. So again, keep an eye on your permission settings and your privacy settings. Make sure that your accounts are locked down, so to speak. Think twice about connecting or posting with people you don't know. Very important. Don't forget to log off. You should be logging off every time you go into your banking. You should be logging off. I know that's one that a lot of people just close the window instead of actually logging off, but it's very important to do that so that hackers can't get in. If it's open on your device and someone hacks into your computer or your device, then they can go into that banking application if you haven't logged off. And keep your digital household clean. So keeping yourself safe from identity theft is very important. That is a common source of fraudulent criminal activity, is when a criminal will get your personal information. They will acquire things like your social insurance number, your address, phone number, and then they will open accounts in your name. So this has been going on for a long time. Many of you probably have heard of this happening. Maybe some of you have experienced it. So very, very important to keep your personal information to yourself. It's hard in this day and age because there are all sorts of people asking you for information all the time, sometimes legitimately. So it's hard to distinguish when it's legitimate and when it's not, but we'll get into that. So then they actually use the identity information for all sorts of different things. It impacts you in a number of ways. Of course, your credit rating can be destroyed. You can lose money. What does the fraudster want? Obviously, all of your personal information. And one of the ways that they might use that is not only to open accounts and take your money, but also they might they might use that just to go on a list, because there are lists made by fraudsters and that gets sold. And one of the names we use for it is a suckers list. They use it. They use that term. We didn't make up that term. Don't blame us. But that's one of the terms that's used for it. I like to think of it as a victims list, really. And so then they target the same people over and over again who have lost control of their information. A fraudster has gotten it, put it on this list, and it just gets resold and resold. So you open yourself up to all sorts of fraudulent behavior. They also will find your information by farming or phishing. Oftentimes that involves email, sending out emails to a large number of people, hoping that the odd person will give too much information. So again, just protect yourself, be very, very cautious, and think about what you might be getting into. Really scrutinize every email, every text message, and think about it. And if you are uncomfortable, there's no harm in waiting. If there's ever pressure, that is a bad thing. That's a red flag that it might be a fraud. If there's a lot of pressure being placed on you to do something quickly, or to be secretive about it, not to talk to anyone else about it, those are two big red flags in terms of frauds. Top scams targeting seniors. So part of the reason we get victimized in Canada, of course, is that compared to a lot of different countries, we are seen as a wealthy country, a wealthy population. So people are getting a lot of money from Canadians. And so, of course, they're going to target Canadians more and more. There is that issue of older generations not being as tech savvy as the younger generations. I definitely feel that. I'm in my late 40s and I am really not tech savvy. So I can imagine someone who hasn't spent 20 years with this technology around, and in their younger years would have definite trouble. I've known people, and then there are a lot of older people that are a lot more tech savvy than me. So there's a whole gamut of people, but people who aren't tech savvy definitely get exploited more in terms of these frauds. Con artists are often targeting the 60 to 69-year-old age group. And that could be because that's an age group that is making a lot of use of the technology, but may not be as wary as younger people. So lottery scams is a very, very common one. We've all heard the horn, the boat horn, and then you're a winner. You've won a cruise. Nothing like that is free, just randomly free. Maybe if you've entered into a contest, you might win it, but we're all getting these calls repeatedly that we've won a cruise. And that's what they're doing, is they're getting people to pay a large fee, basically pay for the cruise in the end. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. New on the scene, COVID scams, lots of different scammers trying to get people to buy vaccines, buy tests, buy vaccine passports, all sorts of different ones. Again, we'll look at some of them more closely in a minute. Telemarketing calls from people impersonating the police. I'm sure a lot of you have gotten that one, where apparently RCMP is going to come to your door to collect money, I think, for the CRA. All sorts of different stories that they'll give. Emergency grandparent scams. We'll watch a video on that in a moment. But that's a very, very common one. It's everywhere, but we've had a couple of occurrences in Barrie recently where people have paid out money. Investment schemes, pyramid schemes, distraction thefts. So not exactly a fraud, but something you should be aware of. They do happen frequently in Barrie. Suspect will approach the victim on foot or by vehicle and make an excuse to talk to the person, and then surreptitiously take something. Often it happens in grocery stores. Often if someone leaves a purse in the cart, then someone will distract them, and they often work in pairs. I've seen this too. I've seen videos of it happening at checkout counters where someone is going to pay, say they put down their wallet, someone distracts them, another person goes around and grabs cash or whatever on their way by. So these things happen on a regular basis. You need to be very alert when you're out and about. Romance scams are another big problem. That happens when the victim and the fraudster meet, usually online, and it often goes on for a very long time. There are a lot of resources put into this sort of fraud by the fraudster. A lot of time, a lot of phone calls, a lot of messaging. I had a friend who fell for this, and she didn't actually give the money in the end, but it went on for about a year where she was getting text messages at all hours because there was a time difference, and talking on the phone. Was really wooed by this guy and believed that they were going to be together. And what often happens is just when they're about to meet finally for the first time, there is some disaster, some problem where the person who is coming to meet you needs money just to make that trip and to get to you. Of course, very, very sad in the end for the victim, causes a lot of emotional issues, not only the money, if they do end up paying the money to get their loved one, so to speak, to them, they lose that money, but they also suffer emotional scars. So a really horrible one. Cra tax scams, most of us have heard of the tax scams that go around. There are a number of different ones. There are emails being sent. There are phone calls saying that officials are going to show up at your door, which is particularly scary for some people. Be very, very cautious when you think CRA is reaching out to you. They do not reach out to you usually through emails or text messages. They might send information emails, but they don't do collections through emails. They don't tell you that your account is overdue, and they certainly don't send you money through emails. iTunes scams, there are a number of different scams that involve iTunes cards. Very important that you know that if you do go and buy gift cards and then give someone the codes on the gift cards, they can use those cards and you will not be able to recover the money. So if someone asks you to do that, asks you to go buy gift cards for them and give them the codes for whatever reason, because they could think up a million different stories to get you to do this, don't do it. That's a scam for sure. So the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre is an agency in Canada that collects information on frauds. So if you're getting calls, say you're getting calls or emails, and you want to report that you haven't lost any money, but you know it's a scam, you can report it to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. They gather statistics on all the different scams and the details. They also work to throw wrenches into the scammers' methods to slow them down. And they do work to find out who they are and to apprehend them as well. So, but usually they will take the information from you and they will compile statistics and do education. Their website has a lot of good information. If you're interested in looking into more about frauds and scams, it's a wealth of information. So the grandparent scam is when a senior receives a phone call. It's usually a male voice. The caller starts out by saying, "Hello, Grandma or Grandpa, do you know who this is?" Something to that effect. And of course, just like a fortune teller, they're fishing for information from you that you will inadvertently give them. And then a little while later in the conversation, they'll feed that information back to you to gain credibility and to make you think that they're someone that they're not, like your grandchild. Yeah, so the senior can respond by something like, "Is that you, Johnny?" Now they have information. Now they know that you have a grandchild named Johnny. They're very good at what they do and making people believe that that they are who they say they are. So I'll just play a little video for you. Oh, I'll try to play a video for you. Let's see here.
I had read and heard different stories similar to mine, and I was always wondering why somebody with an education, knowing what's going on in this world, falls for such stuff. And I figured I was too well informed and too smart for somebody to take advantage of me, but they just caught me at the right time. Hi, my name is Barrie, and I was a victim of fraud. One Saturday, I got a phone call, and a voice on the phone says, "Hi, Papa." And that's what my grandchildren call me all the time, is Papa. He says, I'm up in New York. And I couldn't figure out why he would be in New York, but so be it. I says, "This is Zachary, isn't it?" He says, No, I'm not Zachary. I'm your other grandson, Papa. And I said, "Oh, this is Jacob." He says, "Yeah, I'm Jacob." So that was my first mistake. And he says, "I've got a big problem. I was in a car accident. The lady ran a red light and hit the car, and I got arrested for DUI." He went on to tell me that he needed money to get out of jail. "So that's why I'm calling you, Papa, so I can get some money." And when he said that, I immediately knew that I had to help the kid out. I asked Jacob where I could send the money, and he said, "Well, the police were nice enough to give me the phone number and name of a public defender that will take care of the case." And I immediately called this supposedly attorney, John Williams. And John Williams went over the fact that he needed $1,500 to get Jacob out of jail. And he explained to me to go to my local Western Union office and he can send the money to me. I immediately went to Western Union to send the money. And after returning home, it kept going through my mind if I had done the right thing. The next morning, the phone rings and it's Western Union. The man says, "I'm from Western Union. I want to tell you that the transaction that you made yesterday has been frozen because we think this is a fraudulent transaction." And he told me then what to do: go back to the Western Union kiosk, explain to them what is going on, and he gave me a number that they could use to retrieve my money. If you want to prevent yourself from being taken advantage of, and if you get a phone call where someone is wanting a donation or wanting to help somebody in the family that is falling on hard times or having a problem, don't act right away. Don't be so quick to fall for what might be going on. Hang the phone up. I can call you back it will give you some time to maybe clear your mind to know that it's a scam.
So that is a very common scam that's going on. I had a neighbor who had scammers call her about that, and she doesn't have grandchildren. She's in her 40s, but she had 2 nephews. So she ended up giving them the name, feeding them back the name of one of her nephews, and they quickly realized she didn't have grandkids and switched gears in terms of saying that they were her nephew, or he was her nephew. And again, it was a similar situation. He was on a trip, got in a car accident, and didn't want mom and dad to know. That's often an element of this kind of scam, is secrecy. Don't tell mom and dad, because they don't want you to communicate with anyone that might give you a clue that this isn't legitimate. So be very cautious if someone is contacting you, asking for help, but asking you to keep it quiet as well. And she actually reached out to me on her way to Western Union and did not pay. But again, ask someone. If you're unsure, there's no shame in asking someone, calling a friend and saying, I just want to run this by you. I'm not sure if it's legitimate or not. What's your take on this? Right? She did that extra step, and I was able to tell her that it was a scam. So take the time to verify the story. Call the child's parents or friends, whether they want you to keep it a secret or not. Ask questions that only the person that only the loved one, your loved one, would be able to answer. Never send money to anyone that you don't know and trust, of course, and never give out personal information. So that's important. Never give out personal information that will allow them to scam you further. I know my mom gave out information to someone who called her that said they would help fix her computer. So not only did they not fix her computer, she gave them remote access to her computer. And what they do when they take remote access of your computer is they are data mining, what we call data mining. They're looking through your computer to get any personal information they can, banking information. And at the same time, they asked her for a credit card to pay for this service that they were providing, which was cleaning up her computer, because they called and said, have you noticed your computer's getting slower? Well, most of us have noticed our computers are getting slower because we don't know how to clean them up ourselves, and it costs money to go out and get someone to do it. So it was it's a very easy way to hook people in. So then they had not only her personal information from her computer, but also her credit card information, were able to take money out of her account. Internet phishing, people who use email have probably experienced this, where you get emails asking for information, pretending to be your bank or someone else that you have a connection with. They send these emails out to masses. So it may say Scotiabank. Probably 1 in 5 people bank with Scotiabank. So it lends credibility for those people that it is actually a legitimate email, and they might fall for it. So be very, very cautious. The emails they send are really, really good replications of what you might receive from a bank. Some of them are very high tech, have very perfect logos. So you have to be very, very cautious. We won't get into all the different kinds of phishing, but the one that I talked about is the most common. Many different ways that you can tell that emails are fake, not real. So if you look at this one, there are a lot of different clues in here, and on the next slide, it will show you what the clues are. Oftentimes what I see is poor grammar. So some are really good, some have bank logos, some are perfectly worded, others have very poor grammar, mistakes, or things are worded just how we wouldn't word them, because, or sorry, how we wouldn't say them, because the people are from other countries and English isn't their first language. So we'll go to the next slide and you can see what should have been red flags. So help desk, if you hover on the name, oftentimes the email address where it's coming from will come up. That's a good clue. So if you are suspicious about an email, hover on the name here and the email address will come up. And oftentimes this one will say RBC, but this will be a really strange email address, and you'll know right away that it's not coming from RBC. Fraud alert, that's to generate some urgency. All sorts of things in this one that you can see. Here is a link. This is a live link that's going to take you somewhere else. And what they're going to do is ask you for your personal information. You don't want to be changing your password when you get an email. No one's going to ask you to change your password through email. Send me your account details. They're asking for all sorts of information. Again, creating urgency. If you don't do this by next week, giving you a timeline, your account will be deleted. Oh, spelling error, right? So many different clues. Infotech. You have to ask yourself, do you have a relationship with Infotech? If you've never heard of them, probably a scam. So there are so many different variations on these scams that come through internet. Here are some examples of them. You're entitled to a tax refund now from CRA. This does not happen. So don't fall for this one. If there's a live link embedded in an email, be very cautious. Oftentimes that's scammers trying to get you to go in, open up something. Again, more examples of scams. CRA is a very common one. Ask yourself if you are expecting any information or expecting a refund. You know, really think about whether it's plausible. Does it sound too good to be true? Like CRA is offering you money that you weren't expecting. Are they asking you for information that you wouldn't provide on your tax return, that they don't need? And ask yourself if they're asking for information that you know they already have. So we know that people will let their guard down if they think they're getting money returned to them. This again, if you bank with Bank of Montreal and you received this email, you may fall for it, because how would they know that you bank with that bank? But again, they're just sending it out to thousands and thousands of people, hoping that some people bank with Bank of Montreal. And so they're going to hit that live link, and then they're going to hack your computer or get personal information from you. Another common one is a friend in need email. So what they'll do is the fraudster will send you an email saying that they are traveling, kind of like the Grandparent Scam, but this could come from any one of your friends, any age. And the way they are getting your email is they're hacking into someone else's email and sending this letter out to all of that person's contacts. So it does look legitimate because it is actually coming from your friend's email address. It will show up as coming from your friend's email address, which really tricks a lot of people. But it's a hacker that's gone in and done that. And then they'll tell you how to get the money to them. They'll probably have a sob story about how they were robbed or beaten. Something really bad happened to them to make you feel sorry for them. And there will be a sense of urgency. Internet fix scam. This is what I was talking about that my mom fell for, unfortunately. They'll ask you to take control of your computer in order to clean it up, make it work more efficiently, faster. They'll get payment from you as well. And then they'll go on a spending spree. Letter fraud scam. We don't see that as often in terms of actual mail anymore, but it does happen sometimes. Sometimes it's a long lost relative. They claim to be some prince or lawyer in another country acting on behalf of someone who's deceased. You're the last known distant relative, and they just need a small fee in order to get you the millions of dollars you've inherited because you're the only heir for this person that you have never heard of. It's really a really sad crime because a lot of the victims are desperate for money. You can imagine how someone who doesn't have a lot of money would be very tempted to believe that they're going to all of a sudden receive a lot of money. Another one, I'll speed this up because some of these we've already seen good examples, and I've taken a lot of your time already. Renovation scams. Be very, very cautious about anyone coming to your door, knocking on your door, offering to do renovations or cleaning your windows, that type of work. There are some legitimate people going door to door and doing this. However, a lot of the best people that do renovations don't need to go door to door. There's a shortage of people doing these types of things, and the good ones are booked by you reaching out to them. So best, rather than just accepting who shows up to your door for the job, reach out to the people you know, your friends and family, and ask for recommendations. Different COVID-19 scams. This is a new thing. Oh, look, I can get rid of this. COVID-19 scams. ArriveCan fraud is a common one right now, with web pages and apps asking for payment, posing as ArriveCan, which is the free government platform for travelers, right? So this is a free service. Be very, very cognizant that you shouldn't be paying for this service. That's a scam. Vaccines and tests, of course, they're fraudsters selling these things, especially tests now that they're so scarce. So be very careful. You don't want to get them through the internet. They're not controlled. They're potentially ineffective. It could be just a blatant scam, or they might not be up to the standard that you're actually looking for. So get them from trusted sources. I know that's hard these days, but if you can. And as I think it was Roger saying before the meet, that if you can't get them, best just to isolate and stay home. C.A.R.P and CSB payment scams. The government is not going to ask you through text messages or emails to repay your C.A.R.P. This can be very problematic. A lot of people can fall for this type of scam where an authority is saying you need to pay back money if they have a guilty conscience. So of course, someone who feels like maybe they took C.A.R.P and they shouldn't have, much more liable to fall for this and pay the fraudsters the money because they feel guilty. So be very conscious of how your emotions are being manipulated when you receive emails and text messages. C.A.R.P repayment scams. So they might offer to pay you C.A.R.P or CSB, or they may ask for repayment. Again, be very cautious about giving any personal information through the internet. That's not how CRA or the government works, asking for personal information online. If you are in doubt, if it's something involving the government, you can always call Service Canada. You can get the name of the person you're dealing with and then call them back through the general number, the 1-800 number. The representative that answers at the number will be able to hook you up with that same person that you believe was calling you, if they actually exist. And if it's a scam, they'll be able to tell you that we have no one by that name here. Door-to-door scams. As of 2018, there's not to be any door-to-door sales. It's not a criminal matter. It's not something the police deal with. It's enforced by the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. And their number is here if anyone wants it. You can also always Google Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. And there are a lot of different deceptive marketing practices that they deal with, and certain businesses that they deal with. I think used cars, telemarketing, that kind of thing. We'll skip that one. Credit card skimming. So that doesn't happen as often anymore. That the people have the machines behind the counter. They ask for your debit card and they try to sneakily slide your card through to duplicate cards. What happens is they slide it through this machine. It takes all the data from your card, and then they make lists with your information that's on the card associated with the magnetic strip. So luckily we have mostly chip cards now. We're not handing over our cards, but sometimes we do. And I know that someone was just arrested in Barrie in the last year or so with one of these devices. So they are still being used. Be very, very cautious if someone's asking you for your card or is taking it out of your sight. Never let your card out of your sight. Sometimes an imposter will call and claim to be from card security. Now this happens, I've had this happen a few times over the years where security will actually call me and say, did you use your card in Montreal? We're trying to confirm that this was a fraud. Usually when that happens, they're pretty positive already it was a fraud. They're just confirming with you. They're not going to ask you too many details. They're not going to be asking you the number on your card. If it is a legitimate call, it's security for your card. They already have your name and your address and the card number. What they will be calling for is just to confirm some transactions, whether or not you made the purchases. Online shopping, of course, need to be very careful with Kijiji and eBay. It's one thing when you're online shopping with big companies. I've never had a problem with a big company like Lowe's or Costco, but when you're dealing with individuals on eBay or Kijiji, that's when it especially becomes problematic. As you can imagine, people are selling all sorts of things, have all sorts of stories, like people buying what they think is an iPhone and getting a plastic rendition of an iPhone, that kind of thing when we're talking about eBay and Kijiji. Now, big companies, very, very seldomly you'll have that problem because they have a reputation to maintain. So first of all, they're very quick to shut down fraudsters that are using their logos, any websites that might be illegitimate would be shut down very quickly with these big companies. But again, very vulnerable with Kijiji and eBay. Oh, and just while we're on the topic of Kijiji, where you're actually meeting someone to do a transaction, you are always welcome to use the police station parking lot to do those sorts of exchanges. That might be somewhere where you would want to suggest you meet if you don't feel comfortable meeting someone, having someone come to your home or going to their home. We have cameras, of course, and no fraudster is going to actually show up in the police parking lot if they are planning on taking advantage. Facebook, it is a great way to connect. Be very cautious when strangers are reaching out to you. Again, romance scams are alive and well. We've had a couple of situations recently in Barrie where people have lost their entire life savings to romance scams. So oftentimes they're being approached on a platform like Facebook, and someone desperately wants to be their friend, and then it becomes more and more. And over the course of months or years, they slowly sap the person's money out of their accounts. Very, very sad. So how can you recognize a scam? Just to recap, if it sounds too good to be true, probably is. If you have to pay to play, that's a lot like gambling. You're probably going to be out more money than you would ever get from it. Just be aware of that. If the person will only take cash, that could be a scam. Could mean that they don't want any trace of who they are. If the caller is more excited than you are about the prospect of you buying something from them, that's a good sign that it could be a scam. If the manager is calling, so if you think it's a person that's high up in a company or higher than the usual person that you would be dealing with, that could be a way of them just trying to gain your trust and think that they're important and comply. If a stranger wants to be your best friend, that's a red flag. If it's a limited opportunity and you're going to miss out, that rarely happens. Make it very clear in your mind. Oftentimes things get cheaper the longer you hold out, not more expensive. Not true with cars these days, but in the past and generally, don't fall for the urgency that people present. And if you must give them your private information, financial information, or any other private information, it very well could be a scam. So there's a checklist here. Gwen, I don't know if I give you a copy of the presentation, would you want to disseminate it so that people could have this information? You're muted. Sorry, Gwen, you're on mute.
Is there a link that we could put up for people just to access it?
I don't have that set up, no, but I could look into doing that.
I'm thinking that would be easiest because maybe we could put a link on our website or something.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so just to wrap up, I'm almost done. Sorry, what were you going to say, Gwen?
I just wanted to ask you, I heard that when you get these calls, you should never say yes, because they can record that and use that against you. And yet when somebody calls me and they say, this is the homeowner, or is this Gwen, you just off the top of your head, you say yes.
I heard it was hello. You shouldn't say hello for the same reason.
Have you heard anything about this?
I've heard that over the years. I haven't encountered any victims that have had a problem with that. I'd have to look into that, whether that's a myth or something that happened for a short period of time. It could very well be that it was problematic with voice recognition, banks maybe using voice recognition for a short period of time, and then the banks corrected that way of committing fraud. But recently I haven't heard of any occurrences.
That's good, because I can't seem to stop saying yes.
Yes, I can imagine. Yeah. It would just be too easy if there were ways for people to use that all the time, fraudsters to use that.
But you know, we all get, I bet you some days I get 2 or 3 calls. And the Visa one is quite often, which makes me laugh because I don't have a Visa.
Which one is that?
Visa.
What do they say?
Hello, this is Visa Security calling.
Doesn't matter. The minute I hear Visa, I hang up because I don't have one. But that happens a lot. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And often you jog my memory that, or the gentleman that did that said that, jogged my memory, because you almost sound like a fraudster. That if it's a recording, if you're picking up and you're listening to a recording right off the bat, probably a scam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hang up.
I'd like to make a comment about Facebook. There are often things on Facebook saying, "What's your favorite color? What kind of dog do you like? Where did you grow up?" Don't answer those questions. They're phishing.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a reason they're spending their time gathering this information. They're going to use it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's pretty sad, and they're very inventive.
Yeah.
Well, I've had the CRA supposedly calling me, and they were quite insistent. They called me 3 days in a row, threatening me. And every time they called me, I said, well, before I talk to you, I want you to give me my SIN number and my date of birth. And, you know, that kind of sets them aback, because that's what they're going to ask me. I said, well, if you really are the CRA, then you must know this. And I refused to talk to them until they gave me my SIN number and my date of birth. So, you know, they kept on, oh, is somebody going to come to your door and arrest you? I said, give me my SIN number and my date of birth and I'll talk to you. End of story.
I believe CRA only reaches you by mail. Isn't that right, Julie?
Yeah. Yep.
Not quite, because CRA will send you an email saying you have a secure message. Please log on to the CRA website and not provide a live link. And then if you go to the CRA website and sign in, you'll know that you're on the real thing.
Thanks, Dave.
Right. So that's a way that they get around the fraudsters, is have you go somewhere. And that's a great thing to do, even if you're not, even if it's not CRA. If it's your bank, you can always call back. You can always look for the proper number, call them back so that you're making the call. If you're not comfortable, if someone's calling you and you're not comfortable discussing whatever it is that they want to discuss, but you do feel like you need to discuss it, then you hang up and call them back.
Julie, have you heard anything about the Green Home Network coming around to the doors and wanting to talk to you about installation, that you can get a credit from the government if they can come into the house and check your installation? This just happened a week ago. And we basically said no.
No, I haven't. I know a neighbor had a similar situation. That doesn't ring a bell, the name of that company, but she had a similar situation. And I think from what I could glean, it was a legitimate company, but high pressure, right? Yeah. So even if it's not a fraud, it could be very questionable about whether they are going to take more money than you should be paying.
We felt that they were, because they started asking us questions like our full names and what our phone number was, and my husband just said, nope, not getting it.
I had a call today from somebody called Home Comfort, wanted to know if they could come in and assess my home. So I immediately hung up.
Mhm.
But you get these kind of calls all the time. I just usually hang up.
Yeah.
I
I was
got
just
people,
surprised. Sorry, I was just surprised it came to the door.
Mm.
That's all.
I
Yeah.
had people come to the door for the same type of, insulation promotion. And I just took their information. I looked up the company, but they had only been in existence for 6 months.
Mm.
So I said, I'm not going to go for a major installation with a company that's only been up and running for 6 months. They could.
I
easily
agree with you
fold
there.
Here.
Because my husband asked for identification from him and everything, and he didn't have it.
Yeah.
The other thing I think we have to watch for is all these ads that pop up, because they know your data and what you've been looking at and whatever. So all these ads that are really honing in on what you do and want, these ads come up and then they're trying to sell you stuff. So a lot of them are excessive. I've checked out one and it was very excessive. Well, I don't know that it wasn't legal, but the amount they wanted to charge you was very excessive. So I think you have to be very careful of those pop-up ads on your computer too.
Yeah, even when you're shopping on sites like Amazon, you have to be very cautious. It's just so easy to order things and buy things through the internet, and you just don't know what you're going to get at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
very, very cautious.
What a world we live in.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any other questions? No, Victor, Peter, Sandy?
Nope.
Well,
Well,
Julie, I want to go ahead.
I guess I'd like to comment that, again, one of my old friends, a friend that I'd met in Kenya many, many years ago, supposedly called me from London in January or December saying she desperately needed money. It was an email, and I simply said, okay, I'm quite happy to do this, but I want you first of all to tell me what my wife's name is and what was the name of my car that I used to drive around in Kenya. And that was that came up a blank. So I knew it couldn't be Jean Brown calling me because, well, first of all, I knew it couldn't be her because she hates the cold. She was living in a tropical country for something like 25 years. And London, England is not the place where she'd want to be in December, January. So, it was suspicious right from the start. But yeah, again, you turn the tables on them and say, well, I want the information from you. You give me the information that you ought to know if you really are who you say you are.
Which is true.
Thank you, Julie, so much for doing this, especially on short notice. It seems like even though we're confined to our homes, people still try to fraud us, still try to do their best to get money out of us. And I know that many seniors are very trusting people and they're used to a handshake. And unfortunately, that's not our world anymore. So again, thank you for doing this. I think you did this for us 4 or 5 years ago, but here we are again, and it's even worse.
You're most welcome.
Oh, that's great. And I think everybody will agree with me. This was great. What do you say, guys?
Very good.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks so much.
Seal of approval.
Again, try to spread the word, please. Please,
Yes.
we need people to be educated. That's the biggest thing.
We
Yeah.
do. Education's a good thing always.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll see you in the future at a physical meeting or something. We were actually meeting physically in September, October, and November, and here we are again. And thank you for taking this on. I know from experience that it's not easy doing these presentations online, but let's face it, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Everybody,
bye for now, Julie.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hang on. I know if they're gonna- Okay, I guess that's it.
Are we okay, Adam?
I went on a field trip in the last 20 minutes. It was spectacular. I hope the end of the meeting went well. I'm just getting off the phone with a friend in New Zealand, so I missed out on the last.
Oh my, that's interesting.
That was in the car?
Yeah.
I would just double check with Julie to see if she's okay. I think it was probably okay.
Oh, I think it was fantastic. I think it came through very well. Everything's recorded. I'll get a copy of that sent off to Les in the next few minutes here. And yeah, Amy's on the bulletin for tomorrow. She'll send that out.
Yes, send
Okay.
it to her. And yes, we'll get that out. And I don't know, I'm assuming we'll probably have to do an online presentation for February, and I have to even line somebody up. I've been busy, I haven't thought about it, but I will get on that. Of course, I'm always open to ideas, guys. So have a good night. Don't get scammed. Be careful and stay safe.
Hi, everybody.
Everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Adam.